So Outriders' recent delay was sort of a bummer, but the free demo I've spent the better part of this past weekend in has been a decent consolation prize. Obviously, we can't base a full review on this, and we definitely won't be putting a score on anything until its final release on April 1st, but here are my initial impressions of People Can Fly's upcoming looter-shooter RPG.
Almost looks like home.
That's what worries me.
The overall takeaway so far is that Outriders has some really fun and interesting stuff going on, but also stumbles in a few spots as well. What I think I like best is that it really focuses on feeling a lot more like a single-player RPG. You know, I may not be able to make huge story-altering decisions like in classic BioWare games, at least as far as I've seen, but it's cool to be able to dig into lore with NPCs or unlock new merchants and discounts by completing side quests. Seeing tangible consequences to my actions like that go a long way towards drawing me into Outriders' world.
How did it all begin? Why'd you start fighting?
Combat is, for the most part, another check in the W column for me so far. It follows the satisfying, if familiar, formula from other co-op heavy looter shooters and adds a gory dash of time-bending elemental superpowers for good measure. Gunfights are chaotic fun and leave battlefields literally coated in blood, and I'll admit it's sadistically gratifying to see just how ruthlessly one set of powers could crush, incinerate, or straight up disintegrate enemies when paired with the teammates if I was playing in a group. Plus, there's just something morbidly hilarious about seeing a whole-ass ribcage rolling around like a bony tumbleweed. In more or less standard fashion, the four classes all have strengths, weaknesses, and skill sets that would be familiar to anyone with some experience in class-based action games. So far, though, Outriders seems very clearly focused on the DPS side of things. Yes, the four classes each fill a role on the team, but aside from turning on the Devastator's tank mode, they're all pretty much in service of how quickly you can reduce your opposition to a sticky red paste. Now that uniformity may be a turnoff to anyone who really loves playing capital H healers, but it also allows those who opt not to team up with others to feel safe playing as any of the four classes. And then there's the very real possibility that they'll become much different as they level up in the full game. Some randomized weapon perks I found later on had some team healing buffs, and there was an entire skill tree that the demo barely scratched the surface of. I spent a decent amount of time in teams and exploring on my own as all four classes, my favorite easily being the time-bending roguelike trickster, and found it smoothly balanced both ways by scaling down the number of bad guys you face solo. The roster of enemies present in the demo is fairly limited, but they provide enough tactical variety to demand some quick thinking and strategy, especially with larger groups. As far as loot goes, weapons are a standard array of assault rifles, shotguns, and sniper rifles, but the inventory metagame gets more interesting as you collect rarer gear. I found this auto shotgun in particular a preposterous amount of fun. Rare or better items often have special perks that can either enhance your class-based abilities or even provide new ones, like this assault rifle that generates a protective shield with every hit. It may not really break the mold, but it's a solid take on it with a good variety of upgrades and perks that promise some really interesting builds for higher level characters and teams. All that said, Outriders also stumbles in more than a couple of spots. For instance, I really like the overall story so far. It's a fun take on a collection of post-apocalyptic sci-fi tropes that I'm into, but the writing probably isn't going to win any awards, and a lot of the voice acting falls flat.
What am I now? Altered? Help me understand.
It's a little technically rough too. There are a bunch of clunky transition cutscenes, mission replays force you to click or walk through all the exposition dialogue again, and I was constantly experiencing audio syncing errors in conversations.
He's trying to take out all the vendors in Rift Town. It won't work for him!
Combat is fun for sure, but the lack of distinct aim and camera sensitivity options feels like an oversight, movement is a bit floaty, and it's always hard to tell if you can climb over something or not. Replayability is also something of a concern. It's a big part of whether or not a co-op RPG shooter remains enjoyable. So while combat in Outriders is a bloody good time, it's not a great sign that I found myself yawning through my third and fourth runs of its several sample missions.
Go back! Go back!
What the Outriders demo doesn't do, at all, is give me any sense of what to expect from its endgame. I'm definitely interested to see more of its world and unlock more nifty pseudo-magic, but I'd venture a guess that 70% of my play clock in similarly structured games takes place well after the credits have rolled, so that's kind of a big deal. The developers have detailed a fairly robust endgame plan, but whether or not it has the staying power of other service-adjacent co-op shooters, or if that's even the goal at all, remains to be seen. Hopefully though, it'll keep up the fast pace of its action and decently fun pulpy story, because I really want to see what happens when I level up that auto shotgun. Check back around launch at the start of April for my full review of Outriders, and let us know what you think of the demo in the comments. For more, check out 18 minutes of PS5 gameplay, plus our 10 tips for getting started. And for everything else, stick around on IGN.